Well, hello everybody. How are you? My name is Scott Pinyard. I am the head coach here at This Naked Mind, and I am back as I am most Sundays. I've taken a few weeks off, but I'm back in the saddle now. I'm back to talk about things that I've been thinking about, things that I see in our groups. And this week, I want to talk to you about a big topic, a topic that I hear a lot about, and that topic is regret. Regret. And it's funny, regret plays such a huge role in so many people's journey in a lot of different ways. And what I'd like to do is kind of break down with you how I've been seeing that. How I've seen that happen, what ends up happening when people are stuck in regret, and maybe a way to work through it. So, if that sounds like something you're interested in, please let me know in the chat. I'll be happy to answer questions and stuff as I go. Before I get into that, though, I want to invite you, if you haven't done this before, if you are curious about your relationship with alcohol, if you're curious about changing your relationship with alcohol, then I would love to invite you to join our free, totally free 30-day live alcohol, or sorry, 30-day alcohol experiment. The alcohol experiment, which you can find at alcoholexperiment.com, is 30 days that gives you lessons, that give you insights and information and tips on how you can shift your relationship with alcohol, right? How you can change how you show up every day, how you can change your knowledge to take different action. So again, it's 100% free. The alcohol experiment at alcoholexperiment.com. Go check it out. We've had, I think the sign that Annie holds up on the video there says 250,000. I think it's more than 280,000 now. People who have gone through this program. And we hear every day from people who this has made a big difference for. So head on over to alcoholexperiment.com. Totally free, 30-day program. I would love to have you join us there. All right, let's talk about regret. So first I want to talk a little bit about where I see this and where it comes up, right? So I will hear from people on a regular basis when they start our programs. I'm always in the groups and I'm reading what's going on. If I'm not coaching in there, I'm paying close attention to what I hear. And I hear a lot of talk about regret, right? I'll hear people regret things that they've said or they've done. I'll hear people regretting, like things or opportunities that they've missed, right? And I get it. I fully understand it. I mean, I have a ton of regret myself having gone through this process. There are things that I can look back on, and I could give you a list right now of things that I wish had gone totally differently and only went the way they did because of alcohol. So what do we do, right? What do we do about this? And so often I see people really getting stuck on this thing that happened in the past. But here's the thing, right? Sticking with the regret or guilt, right? Wallowing in it, spending time saying, oh man, I really wish I hadn't done that, or I really wish this had gone differently, or I really wish this, or I really wish that, right? Which I totally understand, especially because we feel responsibility for it. Spending time doing that actually ends up as a reason to continue drinking. And I've seen this over and over and over. Here's generally how it goes, right? Actually, you know what? Let me tell you a story about a client of mine that I worked with. This was years ago. And I remember in our first conversation, she was saying how much regret she had about how her relationship with her daughter had really suffered because of her drinking, how her work had really suffered because of her drinking, how her relationship with her husband, how she was very involved with her church, but then not as much anymore, right? So she could see all of these places all around her. Sometimes specific incidences, other times just things not going the way she hoped they would. She could see all of these things all around her that she wished were different, right? And she just listed them to me. Hey, Laurel, how are you in New Mexico? I hope it's warm there. It's cold and rainy here in Maine. She listed these things for me. She just rattled them off on the top of her head, and I asked her, like, how does thinking about these things make you feel? And, she was telling me, and, she felt like some days she could barely operate thinking about this, and I asked her, well, how has this impacted your alcohol-free journey up until now? Right? Carrying around, hey, Lisa, how are you? Good morning to you. Lisa's in the future, everybody. How are you, how is it helping you, right? Spending time focusing on this. And, she would tell me, well, I really feel stuck. And, I think about these things a lot. I think about them every day. And to be honest with you, it makes me upset, right? And it makes me angry at myself. It makes me sad. And so I asked her, like, what happens when you feel those emotions, right? What do those emotions make you want to do? And of course, the answer was drink, right? I want to drink because I feel this way. I feel so sad about this thing, which, by the way, I can't do anything about. It makes me feel so awful. I want to run away from that emotion and I want to run into alcohol instead. Hey, Kathleen, how are you? And this is super, super common. Juliet, hello. Pam in Massachusetts. Hey, Pam. This is super common, right? People are in this place where it's like, oh, all of these things that happened, right? I can tell you, I have even certain thoughts and memories and things about stuff that happened with my family, right? With my kids that like I really wish had been different and weren't different because of my drinking, right? And so it's easy to look back on that. And if we dwell on it and spend time on it, it makes us feel the emotions that we're trying to escape with alcohol. And that's what I want you to understand from this. Yes, there is this idea that I really regret this. And yes, there's an idea that, hey, if I hold on to this regret, if I hold on to this blame and this shame, then I'm punishing myself and I deserve to be punished because I did this thing, right? Here's the problem. It doesn't help you move forward, right? That punishment, first of all, normally way outlasts the actual events themselves. And if you were to look at it, like, does the punishment fit the crime sort of a question, it's way out of balance because we're beating ourselves up every single day. And so I explained this to this client that I was working with. And then I asked her a question. I said, what would life be like if that had never happened? Right? Let's imagine that you are where you are with alcohol, but these events that you're telling me about, these things that you regret, never happened. What would life be like? And she thought about it for a minute and then she opened up and she was like, oh man, like it would be so different, right? I'd be able to move forward. I really feel like, these emotions are holding me back. I feel like focusing on this stuff and what I'm doing and spending this time thinking about it just makes me feel so upset. And I don't know how to process feeling upset. She started talking to me about how, man, she started to recognize, I guess, that this was standing in her way. As a matter of fact, that she was standing in her own way. That wallowing and wading through this regret was only holding her back. She talked about how wonderful it would be, right? And I got to tell you, like, for those of you who have ever coached or seen one of our coaching sessions, it's amazing what happens when someone has a breakthrough because you can see it physically, right? Like our coaching sessions are online, and you can see people change, their whole demeanor changes. You'll see them maybe start to sit up straighter or start to have more of a relaxed posture, right? And you can physically see the relief transfer through them when they sort of have this realization. And so we were at the end of our call when I asked her this question. We had about an hour together, and just as we're wrapping up, right? I asked her this. I said, obviously those things happened, right? Those things that you regret are there, right? But what would happen if you agree, just for now, to put it down, to just let go of the regret, right? When that thing comes up, what would happen if you say, you know what, I'm going to deal with that in the future? I saw the light bulb go off, right? You see, we can't change what happened, right? As much as we want to, we just can't. So carrying around the weight of it every day, all the time, every time we wake up in the morning, we think about it. As we go through our days, we think about it. As we are ending our days, we think about it. Carrying that around all the time is literally only doing one thing, and that's keeping us stuck. And so a lot of times when I explain this to people, someone will say, all right, so what, Scott? So what, you're saying just let myself off the hook? Like pretend this never happened? And no, that's not what I'm saying at all. However, there is a difference between wallowing in something and being stuck in this emotional swamp and taking ownership, right? And taking responsibility, right? And again, I just want to say that I can't say this enough because it's a pattern I see over and over. This regret is likely stopping you, not only stopping you from quitting drinking, but is likely making you want to drink more often because it hurts. And I understand this, right? A big part of my drinking, especially toward the end of my drinking career, was drinking about my drinking, right? Was, hey, Joanna, how are you? Was drinking because I was sad that I was drinking, was drinking because I felt stuck in drinking, right? And now I look at it and I see it and I'm like, whoa, like it's so obviously clear that it was this self-feeding thing. That's exactly what regret is, right? It's likely making you drink more, which is one of, for a lot of people that I talk to at least, one of the main goals that they have with their life. So I wanted to go into kind of how I coach people around this, right? How I talk to people around this. And I also want to invite you guys to please send me questions. Would absolutely love to answer some. I should have said that at the top, but I totally forgot. I'm a little rusty, guys. It's been a few weeks since I've done this. So here's how I talk about this, right? So first, I tell them what I just told you, right? That beating yourself up is not only counterproductive, but probably making you want to drink more. So the way that I like to talk about this is this, right? The reality is, this is a little harsh, but it's tough love, right? What's happened, happened, and it's your move now, right? The reality also is that people around you change, grow, and evolve, right? The situation that you were in when this regrettable event or a series of events started or happened is different than the situation now, right? You as a person are different, right? Well, first of all, you're seeing it, but so are the other people in the story, right? Humans grow and change and evolve. We don't stay stagnant, even if we try. There are certain things that definitely hold us back from that. Alcohol is one of those things. But recognizing the fact that, hey, we're all on this journey and now it's my move, that's where ownership comes in. Now, ownership for a lot of people sometimes sounds like a scary word, to be honest with you. One of the ways we talk about this in our programs is we'll talk about that, you know, where you are with alcohol isn't your fault, but it is your responsibility. And that can feel kind of heavy, right? That can feel like people are like, oh man, it's my responsibility that all of these things happened. And I just want to be very clear. Like when I'm talking about ownership, I'm talking about ownership of your next move, right? Of the next thing that you do. Because right now, as you're watching this live, and maybe when we're done with this live, I answer some questions, we get through this. As soon as that's done, you have an opportunity to go in many different directions, right? But I'll just take two of those directions. One direction you could go is to stay on the regret train, right? To stay in this place where you're focused on these things that happened in the past that you cannot change, that maybe hurt you or those around you. And you can experience those same emotions that hold you back, that keep you pinned down. Or you could go in the second direction. And the second direction is how I help clients and how we help people in our programs go through this, right? And it sounds something like this. It's, yes, this thing happened while I was drinking. This regrettable thing, this thing I wish had never been part of my life happened. And now I want to help myself get to a place where I can move beyond it. Whoa, right? What does that mean, where I can move beyond it? So that's different for everyone, right? So this lady that I was telling you about, that I coached years ago, you know, she was able to take my advice and she was able to say, you know what, I'm going to put this down. I am going to deal with this later. She actually picked a date in the future. She said, right now I'm going to work on me, but eventually down the line, down the road, I want to come back and revisit this stuff when this stuff is still going to cause emotions, but I'm going to have different coping mechanisms, going to have different ways to help working with them. And she goes, I'm going to deal with those down the road. And instead of saying, oh man, I can't believe I did this, and keeping herself stuck, it motivated her, right? Because once she recognized that she had ownership of the next step, that meant that she was able to take that next step and do something positive with it. And you guys hear me talk all the time about next steps and what it all looks like and how it feels. And, I will tell you unequivocally that watching this video is a very positive next step, right? Going and talking on any sort of online alcohol free group, making positive friends, that's a positive next step. The next step does not have to be quit drinking. It just has to be taking the next step in the direction that you want to go, because this is what happens, right? We take ownership of this and we say, this thing happened and it sucks and I regret it, but I'm going to move forward so that I can move beyond it. And what does beyond it mean? Well, in some cases, right, beyond it is actually going out and connecting with people that we feel may have been affected by it, right? This is what they talk about in AA, about making amends, right? There's a reason for this. This stuff weighs on us. It weighs on us. The problem is that while we're drinking, we don't often have the emotional space and the emotional tools to effectively deal with it. So we keep going back to drinking. But by taking ownership and saying, no, I want to deal with this, right? I don't want to feel this anyway. I can take the next step, right? The next best step, the next thing I can do, right? So a couple of things, I wrote down a few things that ways that I've heard people kind of talk about this. So in one, with this lady I was coaching, to go back to this, she's saying, I want to do this for me so that I can go fix my relationship with my daughter, right? And so her daughter it was her high school years when the drinking was really heavy, and she just felt like she wasn't really there. And I have I have an 11-year-old daughter who thinks she's in high school, but she really, like, there's a lot of emotional stuff going on, right? And so it's really important that I'm there able to talk to her. My wife's there able to talk to her. And this lady felt like she just wasn't, that support wasn't there. And so, yes, she could sit and regret that, but instead she's like, oh man, if I clear some of the space in my head, I can actually be there for her. And yes, she's older now, but there's still things to talk about. There's still time to repair this relationship. I had another person that I coached around this that was like stuck in this place where the regret was making them feel like they needed to drink. And the more they drank, the more they did what they regretted, right? It's that feedback loop I was talking about. He wrote to me this way. He said this. He said, I am going to work on my relationship with alcohol so I can stop doing things that make me want to drink more. And I was like, oh, that's amazing, right? It's amazing. And we don't, again, often look at regret this way. Often we look at regret like we deserve this because we were bad. And I'll refer you to any of the videos that I've done talking about how where you are with alcohol isn't your fault, but it is your responsibility. And so taking on this idea of regret and flagellating ourselves over and over and over is only doing one thing. And like I said, I'm going to repeat this over and over, right? That's only keeping us stuck. I want to address, I see some comments here. I'd love to be able to address those and then I'll wrap up. Katie says, yes, that's where I am. Katie, good news. I'm glad you're watching this then. Let's see. Chrissy says, I'm grateful for the non-regrets. And now a sober friend said to me before I stopped drinking, we haven't gotten a DUI yet. We haven't hurt someone else yet. We haven't, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Exactly, Chrissy. That's a great way to look at it. But even if that is the case, right? Even if someone is watching this who has had multiple DUIs, and I talk to people every day that are in that situation, it doesn't get better by holding on to that regret, right? It doesn't get better by really focusing on that. Instead, it gets better by taking ownership. Let's see. Katie says, how true do you hold the quote, if you are wondering if you drink too much, you drink too much? I feel like I keep making excuses for myself and why I don't need to quit, but I want to quit. All right. So I love this, Katie. Now, one thing that's different about this Naked Mind than a lot of other, programs that you'll find is that, there's not a lot of maxims like that, right? And so, no, I don't necessarily think if you wonder if you're drinking too much, it means you're drinking too much is actually true. But I love that people think about it, right? Because having that thought gives you the opportunity as a person to step back and say, wait a minute, is this really what I want for my life? And ultimately, that's what we're trying to do at This Naked Mind, right? Is we're trying to give people information and tools and tactics, yes, to help them get unstuck, but also to help them really think about, like, is this something I actually want in my life? People talk about the This Naked Mind method and how it works. And one of the things we hear over and over and over is that it's like a Jedi mind trick, right? The reason people say that is that our programs and our method focuses on the desire to drink alcohol, not the behavior to drink alcohol, right? Those are two different things. And so by changing your desire, you have different behavioral outcomes. And the reason that I'm saying all of this is that this conversation, this question of like, man, I wonder if I'm drinking too much, that is such an incredible opportunity. It doesn't mean anything other than you have the agency to go, you know what, I am unhappy with this. I'm going to move forward. I hope that makes sense, right? It's not something that I think is like a hard and fast rule where, it's not something like a hard and fast rule. It's something that is more of a, how do I say this? It's something that's more of an inflection point, right? When that thought comes into your head and the idea of like, do I want this in my life as much or not? I find that to be super, super powerful. And any of you who know me, who have worked with me in our programs know ownership as an idea is something I'm really, really big on. And not ownership, again, in a punitive sense, but in the sense of empowerment, right? In the sense of, yeah, you know what? I am wondering if I drink too much. I don't really like this. I'm going to do something about it. That's how this works. So I hope that's helpful. That was a little bit circular. So let's see. Pam says, thank you for going live today. I was really struggling. Pam, I'm glad I could help. Julie said, you've said just what I needed to hear this evening. Oh, that's great. That makes me very happy, Julie. Thank you for that. Let's see. Beton, I'm not sure how to say that exactly, so apologies. Says, I just finished reading the first liminal point in This Naked Mind. I'm accepting that I don't have control over alcohol. It's not a bad habit. It's an addiction. I have to tell you what, when I first realized, one of the points that, and there's other books that talk about this too, but like when I first recognized that, me not being able to quit drinking was actually my brain working exactly as it was supposed to, that's when I'm like, oh, right. And that's what This Naked Mind really illuminates, right? The book and our courses, we talk about how alcohol affects our neurochemicals, right? How it affects our thoughts and emotions. And yeah, there's this idea like, oh, I could stop anytime. I don't know how many times I said that, by the way. Like, oh yeah, if I wanted to, I totally could. Meanwhile, I didn't. And the times that I tried, it wasn't going so well. Excuse me. But the idea that, wait a minute, if I just learn some more information, right? If I take in some more information about alcohol and its effects on me and its effects on my life, then I can make an informed decision. That's the power of This Naked Mind. So thank you for that, Baton, and congratulations on that. I hope that you enjoy the rest of the book. Let's see. Baton also says, the choices I made while drinking, I have to forgive myself for them. Yeah. And let me tell you about that. That's kind of where I was going to go with the end of this here. So you saw where I was going. But this idea of, okay, this happened. I need to forgive and move forward. And maybe there are some things I need to patch up, right? Maybe there's some things people I need to talk to. Maybe there's some adjustments I need to make to me, right? Maybe these events say more about me and how I'm affected, whatever that might be. Right? The reality is that doing any of that stuff is super laudable, is the sort of thing that responsible people do, right? And so being able to do that takes emotional and mental fortitude, right? It takes a lot. I mean, honestly, it takes a lot for, this client I was talking about to call up her daughter and say, hey, you know what? I just want to say, like, I really recognize that I wasn't there for you in high school. And, that hurts me. And I want to move forward from that, right? There's a lot there, right? Because the other side of that conversation, it's going to be pretty heavy, right? And so in order for us to be in a place to mentally and emotionally handle that, right? To forgive ourselves and to ask others for forgiveness, we have to be in a state of mind, and we have to be in a mindset, and we have to be in an emotional state that's going to allow us to do that. Beating yourself up will never get you there, ever. Ever. The best thing that beating yourself up will do is that hopefully you'll beat yourself up long enough that other people will forget about it, and then you'll eventually forget about it too. Meanwhile, you're drinking the whole time, right? And that isn't really forgiveness. So, Baton, that's a great point. You know, being able to do that, and again, taking ownership gives you the power to develop those skills. So taking ownership of that very next thing that you do, right? Today, after this video, I'm going to read a little bit more of This Naked Mind. Today, after this video, I'm going to go post in this sober group that I'm a part of, whatever that next step is, right? Each one of those steps is taking responsibility, is taking that ownership. And each time you do that, it gives you a little bit more power. And before you know it, you're at a place where you can actually deal with these regrets instead of just deal with the effects of these regrets. And I do want to say, for those of you who are feeling this, you are absolutely not alone. I see, again, every single day, I see people who are feeling exactly what you're feeling right now. And so if you find yourself in that position, I want to ask you a question, right? What would life be like if you just put that down for a little bit? I'm not saying forget about it. I'm not saying let go of it forever. I'm not saying never address it with anyone. I'm saying, what would life be like if you said, you know what, I'm going to deal with this out in the future. And between now and then, I'm going to work on me. What do you think would change? What do you think would shift? Right? Like, what emotions would be different for you? What different actions would be different? Or what different actions would be open to you? Right? Take some time and think through that. And when you do, you'll start to see that these thoughts of regret are absolutely standing in your way. And the sooner that you can say, no, I'm going to own this. Hell yeah, that thing happened. Yes, that thing happened. And yes, I regret it. And I'm going to move beyond it. And the way that I'm going to move beyond it is I'm going to give myself the mental and emotional tools that I need. And that comes from being alcohol free in order to deal with it. And I'm going to stop beating myself up. So that's essentially what I wanted to say. I have some more comments in here. I also want to encourage you guys, please type in questions as I'm doing this. I'll wrap up in a few minutes. Lisa, it's a conversation starter in your head. Permission to just ask the question. Yes, I love that. Kathy says, happy I found you here live today. Do you have regular times you go live? Well, here's the thing. So Kathy, I can tell you that I go live sometime between normally 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. Eastern time in the US on Sundays. That's the normal time that I go for. Let me tell you what I got going on. I got a daughter in softball. I got a son in soccer, and I have a 3-week-old daughter right now too. So my life is a little bit crazy. So what I can tell you is that I will be here on Sunday afternoons. I can't do the same exact time. We've got so much juggling, but I do try to make it every Sunday, you know, between about 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. Eastern time. So I wish I could give you a regular time, but if you're around during those times, you can always check in and see if I'm here. So thank you for that question. Kathleen says, my daughter's high school years were some of my worst drinking days due to a work injury leaving me at home. I've since quit drinking 2.5 years now, and our relationship is wonderful. Most, if not all of it has been forgiven. I kept telling her I would quit, but I never did. After reading This Naked Mind, I quit for good. She was tired of my excuses and not following through. I finally did, and she has never been happier. Kathleen, I love hearing that. And you just reminded me of something I mentioned a little bit, but I should probably go back and clarify, which is the fact that the other people in these stories have also grown and evolved, right? The other people in these stories very often want to be able to move beyond this as well. But, you know, if they're feeling like, man, he's continuing to drink, right? I'd love to forgive him. I'd love to connect with him. I'd love to get beyond this, but it's hard to do that because I feel like the alcohol's still in the way. That's going to be hard, but they also mature, right? They also grow. And so Kathleen, I'm sure you found that over this time, you were able to go back and connect with your daughter in a much deeper way. And you can probably have conversations about things. I'm curious if this is true, Kathleen. I bet you can have conversations with your daughter now, today, 2.5 years after you quit drinking, about the worst of the worst when you were drinking, a conversation you probably never thought you would have while you were still drinking, right? Because just the thought of it, the emotion of it, just it was like overload. So thank you so much for sharing that, Kathleen, and super congratulations on that. I love hearing that. That's so awesome. Let's see. Yeah, I did that with my daughter once and I was in a better place. We hugged and cried. It was overwhelmingly wonderful. Yes, good. Super happy about that. Um, all right. Let's see. Just a few back and forth. Julie says, good night from England. I'm off to bed to start reading This Naked Mind again for some reinforcement. Now, 37 days alcohol free. That's amazing, Julie. Congratulations. Which is unheard of for me for this past 30 years. Congrats, congrats. That's so awesome, Julie. So happy to hear it. And Kathleen answered me. She said, yes, I talked to her and even show her my posts on the sober site. That's amazing, right? That happens by giving yourself some space around that regret, right? Because, and let me reiterate this one more time as I wrap up, people often say, man, I'm really stuck in this place because of regret. God, I wish I hadn't done that. I wish I hadn't said that. I wish I hadn't missed that opportunity. I wish I hadn't missed this opportunity. And we have these thoughts. Thoughts cause emotions, right? So when you think those thoughts, you actually feel those emotions. And when you feel those emotions, the sadness, the anger, the regret, the frustration, right? Whatever it might be for you, right? Those are the things that a lot of people say are the reasons that they drink in the first place. And so regret gets us on this merry-go-round where it's like, man, I really regret doing this. And you think about it for long enough and you feel like shit. And then you feel like shit, so you drink. But then you drink and you wake up the next day and you start thinking again about those things that you regret. But then you think about them for long enough and you feel long enough, you feel like shit. And that makes you want to drink. This is a self-feeding cycle. And so the way out of this self-feeding cycle is to take ownership. And I don't mean take ownership like beat yourself up. Beating yourself up is keeping you on the merry-go-round. What I'm asking you is to do is step off of the merry-go-round and take ownership of the next step, the next thing you are going to do. I'm going to watch a live. I'm going to read a book. I'm going to join the alcohol experiment. I'm going to join the path, whatever it might be. By taking that ownership, you're putting yourself one step closer to having the tools and the space that you need to deal with those difficult emotions. And I can tell you that you will be able to deal with those difficult emotions when you take enough next steps. So that's really what it's all about. Regret is awful, but giving yourself space from regret, allowing yourself to heal, and then dealing with those things that you regret, that's how you can move beyond them. And that's how you can take motivation from the fact, ugh, this thing happened and I hate it and I want to move beyond it. So now I'm going to take care of me. And it's through taking care of me that I'm able to move in the direction I want to. So I hope that all makes sense. I know it's a lot to kind of put in your head. But thank you, everybody, for joining me. Oh, let's see. Kathleen said, you need to wrap your head around what happened when you drink, own it, make amends, and let it go. Yes. Yeah. But it has to happen in that order, right? It's very difficult to do while you're still drinking because those emotions are there. So I hope all of this makes sense. I want to thank all of you for hanging out with me for a little over half an hour. I'm going to be here much more regularly on Sunday nights. I just took a few weeks off recently, but now I'm back. I'm back at it. If you are interested in what life might be like for you, alcohol free, if you're curious, right, if you want to come to a place that, we're not going to tell you exactly what to do, and we're just going to give you information and give you a space to talk with other people about what you're learning and what you're experiencing, if you're ready for a 30-day break from alcohol, then I cannot recommend enough the absolutely free alcohol experiment. You can find out more information at alcoholexperiment.com. It is there that you can sign up for this free program, and it's a game changer. So I really hope you decide to join us. Go find out. Again, it's 100% free. It's a 30-day program. It's daily videos. It's community. It's really being able to dig in and understand where you're at with alcohol and what you want to do next. And guess what? At the end, we don't preach. So you're not going to get to the end of this 30 days and get a video from this beautiful face saying, all right, never drink again, right? That's not going to happen. what's going to happen is we're going to get to the end and we're going to say, all right, you have the information, you get to take ownership. So if that sounds good to you, head on over to alcoholexperiment.com, and there you can find this 100% free program. Thank you again for hanging out with me. I hope you all have a fantastic week, and I will be back next week to talk a little bit more about things that I'm thinking about. Be well. Talk to you soon.